Okay, so we are basically moving on, and the next thing that we're moving on to is setting up our MongoDB and Prisma. Alright, so let's not waste too much time. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into the terminal and then enter npx init, npx prisma init. Okay, so npx prisma init. Then we hit that. It's going to take some time to load up, so I'm just going to pause the video, and then once it's done, okay, it's already here, so I guess we're going to continue from there. So this is our Prisma, and you can see when I open it and we go up, you can see that we have all these things all set up, right? We have this one set to PostgreSQL. We're just going to change that to MongoDB. Nicely done. Then this env is taking the values from here. So what we need to do is we're going to have to change this database URL to the original database URL, and then we can do that with MongoDB. We just go into the MongoDB site, or if you have the shell, you can use that too as well. Or the compass, you can use that too as well. So yeah, looking at this, I think some of you might be absolute beginners, right? So for you when you come into MongoDB, you're going to have to create a cluster from beginning, right? And in order for you to be able to create a cluster, I think if you're trying to create a second cluster, let's reset. Okay, so if you're trying to create a second cluster, what is going to happen is they'll tell you to pay, but for all those who are just fresh and everything, you're going to have to select the free one. I think the free one will be somewhere around here. Just select that in case this is the free one, right? You see it will be written here free, and then once you're done, you just keep the cluster name just like how it is. If you want to change it to, you can change it. There's no problem with that, and you can leave the provider if you want to change it to, I don't know, maybe some people know more than us, so and just leave the rest of the fields like that, and just click on create deployment. Since I've already done that, I don't think I have to do it again, so let's just take the link. So I'm going to assume that you have followed the steps to create your own cluster in case you are new, and then you should see this, right? That should allow you to connect. But before you connect, we need to make sure that we do a few checks. We make sure that there are a couple of things that we've checked and they are intact, right? Now the first thing we're going to check is the database access, and the database access is basically they are basically the credentials that allows us to use our Mongo URL, so we can communicate with our database a whole lot more easier. So let's quickly go to the cluster or the overview. Let's go to the overview, and then I'll quickly click on this connect over here, and then I'll click on Mongo for VS Code. Then I'll just copy this. After copying it, all I need to do is come here and then come and paste, right? So let's assume you just came here, you came to copy and paste, you are seeing this, right? The DB username and DB password, you're seeing these bad boys here, and you don't know what to do. The first thing that you're going to do is you need to go to the database access like I mentioned, and then you create, so let's assume then you create a new database user. Then inside this database user, you can just say something like new user, like don't use any complicated, just new user, or you can write your name, right? You can just write your name, so I can just say Sylvester and Sylvester. Then that should basically do it. So yeah, that's then we'll come to the built-in role. Then we add read and write to any database. Then we just add the user nicely. Okay, so now that we have this all working out perfectly, what we are going to do is, you see the details that we put in here, what we're going to do is to just clean this and then we'll put it inside. So Sylvester and Sylvester. Okay, now that we are done with this, that doesn't mean you can connect to your database. You need to set up something called a network access, and then the network access is going to check for the IP address that the request is coming from and decides whether to allow it or not. So as you can see, this is my current IP address, and this is another IP address that I had added. Let me just delete it, and then let's re-add it. So we are going to click on add IP address, and then for this you are going to say 0.0.0.0. then we just hit enter, or we just hit confirm, and it should basically say, oh, connect. This should basically allow us to use our database from basically every part of where we are in the world, right? So now that we've been able to set this up, okay, it says that it's pending. I just received an email. Okay, they're telling us to do something. It says, okay, allow access from anywhere. All MongoDB clusters are protected by authentication. It's important to, okay, so I don't know what exactly they sent to me in the email, but I guess I have to log in for my cell phone or something. Okay, it says it's active. Oh, okay, it says it's active now. So yeah, let's just continue. So since we can now accept all requests from any part of the world, like wherever we are, we can now move on into the project. So here, this part is already set up like how we need it to be set up. So, and also some of you, when you open up your Prisma, you'd see that it's all blank, right? Like you'll be asking yourself, why is it this blank? That's because you need, like, you see it to be white. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's because you need to download the Prisma plugin. So you just come into the extensions and then you search for Prisma, and you should be able to download. So when you download it and it's installed, you should see that you get all these things, including the autocomplete and stuff like that. So now that we understand how this works, let's work on our first model. So we'll just say model user. Now this model user is going to be taking the ID, and then this ID is going to be the type string. So you can do something like this. ID is going to be the type string. Then we're going to take the ID, so like the @ID, then we say default. Okay, we say default. Then we can quickly make this auto and then initialize it. Then we give the space that we map through. We map through the underscore ID field of every model inside the MongoDB database, and we set it to DB object ID, right? DB.object ID. Okay. Okay, so this is nicely done. Alright, now that we've been able to set up the ID, let's quickly understand what is going on. So this, we are saying that this is the ID field of every user, and then you see how MongoDB works. We don't store documents with normal ID, but we do store it with the underscore ID, right? Or they do store it with the underscore ID. So for that reason, we are going to be mapping through every document underscore ID, and then we are matching it with the user. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So yes, that's basically all that side is doing. And right after doing that, we need to give it a name, and then we are setting the name to be a string, an optional string to be precise. So after that, then we come down and then give it an email, and then the email also has to be an optional string, and then we make sure that the email is unique. Then right after doing that, right after doing that, we are going to have to check if the email is verified, and then we like, so if the email is verified, then we set it to date and time, like an optional date and time value or type, and then we take the image, and then we also say that the image has to be an optional string, right? Okay, so optional string. Okay, nice. Then right after that, we need to take the password, make that one to a string, and then we can come here and then look for the created at. So we can say created at, then give that a date time what at default, and then we say what it should be now. Okay, nice. So now that we have that, we can just come down here and add the updated at if we want to. So you can see this is it, right? So so this is basically the first part of this user model, and we are not done. So what we are going to quickly do is we're going to create like a few relations right under it, right? So for that, we are going to say conversations, right? So we are going to say conversation IDs. So these conversation, oh come on, okay, so conversation IDs. Okay, so these conversation IDs are going to be string, right? And so this type of string, then we basically come here and then assign this db.object ID to it. Then we have to come down below here, then we say conversations conversation. Then we come and then we say relation. So at the relation, then what are we making it relate to? What we are making it relate to is we are going to say make sure that the fields, right? Make sure that the fields here is going to be what the conversation IDs, and then the reference is going to be what ID, right? So don't worry, the reason why this is being marked like this is because we've not created that conversation model yet, so we are going to quickly create it, no worries. Okay, so now that we have this working like how we need it to work, we're going to come here and then we are going to say send message IDs, right? And then these send message IDs are going to be string with the array and the at object ID, you see it. Then right after that, we come down below and then we say send messages, and then we assign it to the message. I don't want it to autocomplete because I know some people find it hard to follow that way. So this message array, then we say this at relation. Then we want to make sure that this relation is going to be seen. We make sure we write this seen here. Then after that, we set the fields to be what send message IDs, and we want to set the references to what ID. Okay, so this one too is there, but like I said before, we've not created a model. That is why you're seeing the line under it, but no worries, we are going to create them in a second. And then the last thing that we want to add is the account IDs, right? So the account IDs, we can quickly just it's basically the same thing, like it's basically the same thing. So like account, and then we have message, message. Okay, now we're about to quickly create these models. So we'll come down below and I will say model, we just say model account, and inside this model account we take this id string, okay, then we would quickly, so what I basically did here was copy this. You can just copy that. Oh, what's going on? I'm coming. Take off my earphones. Okay, just took off my earphones. So what is going on here is we basically just copy this first part here and then we just pasted it here, right? Like that's what you can do. But you know, because I'm using the cursor code editor, it's like auto completing things for me. So yeah, that's why. So yeah, you can see, so this is the user ID here, and you can see, so user ID string, and then we make sure that it's going to be what db object id. Okay, nicely done. Then we are going to set the type to string. We are going to set the provider to string. Then we are going to set the provider account ID. We are going to set that to string as well. Then we would say refresh token. So this refresh token, we set that to a string. Then we add the db.string. Okay, so after doing that, we also come down here and then come and add the access token, right? And then we set that to the type of optional string. Okay, optional string, I need to do this well, so we remove this r, and we also set that one to the db.string, right? Then we come and then say expired at, so expires at, then we set that to int, right? So expires at, then we set that to the int, optional int. Then we say token type has to be what, the string, right? Then we come down and then select the scope. The scope to, we are going to set that to be a string, which is also optional. Then we can take the ID token, okay, ID token, that one is also going to be an optional string. Then we take the session state, and the session state is also an optional string. We now come below here and then we say user, right? And then this user is going to be this, then at relation, so relation, then the fields, the fields for the relation is basically going to be this one, and then we just pass in the user ID field. Then we make sure that the references also takes in the ID that is there. Okay, so right after working on this, let's not forget to come and set a few ground rules down here. Then we say, oh, take this at unique thing here, right? Take this at unique thing here and then open it up. Once you're done opening it up, pass in these things, which is what, the provider and the provider account ID. Nicely done. So now that we've been able to set up the account, what we need to quickly work on is the conversation model. So for that, I'll just take this conversation, and then we can just, I mean, it's basically the same thing. Like I said, you just come up here, you copy it, you come and paste. Like, it's basically the same thing, so don't get confused or fight me for that. So okay, so here, this is basically it for the ID. Then for the conversation, we need to have a created at, and then that created at is what? Date time. It has a type of a date time, and then the default is now, right? Then right after that, we need to come here, and then we set the last message at, we set that one to a date time over here. Then we come here, and then we come and check, oh, the name, then it has to be small, so the name. Then we also set that one optional string. We come and also check, oh, is group, is it a group? Then if it's a group, we set that to, so the group is going to be an optional boolean like we have here. Then we are going to come here and then set the message IDs, right? So message IDs, right? Message IDs is going to be what? Just type the type string. If you guessed it, get yourself a toffee, I don't know, Obama biscuits, I don't know. But yeah, get yourself something to celebrate. And yeah, we can just, put it in like this. Okay, so message IDs set to the type string array. Then we set it to the object ID. Then right after, we come below, and then we'll come and say, right, we come and say message. Okay, then that is basically it. So now that we have this working, we are not done. What we are quickly going to do here is we are going to pass in a few more things, which is what? User IDs. And then these user IDs is also going to be an array of strings, and we are going to make sure that it's a DB object ID, right? Then over here we just say users, right? And then this users is going to be set to user. Then we make sure that the relation is what? Open it up and then set it to fields. Then the fields is what? User IDs. Nicely done. Then we'll come here and then set the references to what? ID. Okay, so yeah, so this ID, so we fill in the user ID fields with this ID that we have over here. Okay, so nice. Now that we have been able to set this up nicely, there's one more model that we need to work on. Then we can move on to authentication, the more technical side of it, using NextAuth. So here we are going to say model message, then we open it up, we pass in the ID. Like I said, it's just the same thing that we just copy above and come and paste it here, right? So we pass in the ID, then we come and then we say, oh, but every message has a body, and then this body has to be what? An optional string. And we can check if the message has an image. This image too is going to be an optional string. Then we will come and say, oh, but every message too has like the time it was created at, right? So created at date time, then what? We set the default, right? So we say at default, make it the time that it is, the same moment. Then right after that, we can come and add the updated time if we want to. So updated date time. Okay, then once we are done with this, we need to come down here and check for the scene ID, the messages that have been seen, right? So I'll say scene IDs, and then these scene IDs are going to be an array of strings, right? And then we are going to make sure that these arrays of strings are database object IDs. Okay, then right after doing that, we can come down here and then say scene, or like who is the one that has seen the things. So right, so it's always going to be a user that has seen the things, right? Let me not do the autocomplete thing because some of you might not be able to follow. So here, so we have these users, and then how we are going to be picking them out is like the relation. So the relation with the actual user model is what, oh no, is what, so we are going to say that let's take the field, right? And then inside the field we are going to quickly pass in what, scene IDs. Okay, and right after here we take the references and then we pass in what, ID. You get what I'm trying to say? But we are not done. We need to make sure that when we come here we apply the scene text exactly like how we did it above here, the top here, exactly like how we did it above here, right? Cool. So knowing this, we can just come down here and we can come and create this conversation. So we can say conversation ID has to be what, a string, and it has to, we have to make sure that it's a database object ID. Then we come down here and then we take this conversation, right? We take this conversation here, right? Then we use it, we connect it to the conversation model, right? And then we say, oh, what should it have in relation to this particular model? And then we say, let's open it up and say the field. So the fields, we want to make sure that inside the fields we are storing a bunch of IDs as what? We're storing a bunch of IDs as what? As conversation IDs. Okay, if you're able to guess this, get yourself another coffee or something, right? Then we say, you see, I mentioned something about where we are getting it from, and that is going to be the ID of the conversation model. Okay, nicely done and nicely thought out. Then we come down here and insert the last one. That's going to be sender ID string d, and then the sender ID is going to have to be a string, and then we make sure that it's a database object ID. Then we come down here and then we say that sender, so the sender has to be what, user. Then this user is going to have this relation, right, with the, so the relation is, let's make sure that we are taking the field what, sender ID, and then this sender ID, what is it taking its IDs from? So the reference is definitely going to be the ID of the user model. Nicely done and nicely thought out. So looking at the project, let's quickly go around and we would see, okay, so we are having an error here. Let's quickly look through project to make sure that everything is correct. Okay, this side, so for this one, under the conversations, make sure the user has his array notation attached to himself or itself, and the error should leave now. Alright, so that's basically it for setting up our Prisma and MongoDB inside our NextJS project. And hopefully in the next one we should be looking at NextAuth and how to set it up for our authentication in our application. Alright, so yeah, I'll see you in the next one.